Here's the truth for you. There's so many people who become successful, who are making $1 million every single year, and then boom, suddenly they're getting cancelled because they did something stupid. They were racist, they were homophobic, they were, sexist, anti-sematic, xenophobic, misogynist, whatever. There is a lot of terms to describe these people who get cancelled despite being famous. Even the best of us, the writers you used to read, the authors you used to read, back when you were young, back when you were in school, the classics, they're all monsters. They are all monsters. I'm joking. A lot of them were great, but there is a long list of them that were entirely awful, and I'm gonna prove it. This video, I'm gonna show you classic authors being assholes, being monsters, being anti-Semitic, sexist, racist, whatever, the whole gist we just talked about. And I'm gonna prove it in this video that all humans are dumb, and they're equally dumb. And those who become successful are just successful dumb people. All right, and this video, you could take it as a writer as what not to do as a writer. Okay, let's delve into this. So Kipling is actually one of the greatest authors, one of the greatest poets throughout history. This guy was so famous that his poems were read by the US president at the time, not yet president, but future US president Roosevelt. Okay, this man was super famous for his time, and he was really tremendously successful, but he was racist. He was an imperialist. He wrote a poem trying to justify imperialism. The title is called The White Man's Burden. The White Man's Burden. And basically he argues for imperialism, trying to justify it with the classical narratives used to justify imperialism, which is we're bringing civilization and it is the white man's job to do that. All right, so I'll be reading you actually quite a nice summary of the situation. All right, The White Man's Burden, Kipling's hymn to US imperialism. In February 1899, British novelist and poet Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem entitled The White Man's Burden, the United States and the Philippine Islands. Now I want you to really understand the United States committed horrific acts in the Philippines, and its inaction also led to the deaths of countless people. Anyway, in this poem, Kipling urged the United States to take up the burden, all right, of empire, as had Britain and other European nations. Published in February 1899, issue of whatever this is, the poem coincided with the beginning of the Philippine-American War and the U.S. Senate ratification of the treaty that placed Puerto Rico, Guam, Cuba, and the Philippines under American control. This tells you that American imperialism was hot at the time. Anyway, Theodore Roosevelt, soon to become vice president and then president, copied the poem and sent it to his friend, Senator Henry, commenting that it was rather poor poetry, but good sense from the expansion point of view. I mean, this guy justified imperialism so well with a poem that wasn't even that beautiful, but he justified it so well that future President Theodore Roosevelt actually commended him. As you can see here, it starts with, "Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go send your sons to exile to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness, unfluttered folk and wild, your new caught, sullen peoples, half devil and half child." What the half devil and half child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, and 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden. And he's really basically just calling young white guys, to take up the white man's burden, and the leaders of America at the time. So yeah, he's justifying imperialism. Can you imagine a poem today by a white author who is basically calling the United States to go back into Afghanistan, or to go back into Iraq, or to fight Iran? in a poem so that we can control those lands for American use. I mean, that would get you cancelled right out of the door. Anti-Semitism, all right? Let's talk about anti-Semitism, because great authors from beyond the grave, super anti-Semitic, all right? Super anti-Semitic. I remember a particular video I made a while ago talking about H.P. Lovecraft, and I read you one of his poems. And it's on the creation of niggers. He writes, "When, long ago, the gods created earth in Jove's fair image, man was shaped at birth. The beasts for lesser part were next designed." And here he's referring to black people, okay? He goes on, "Yet were they too remote from humankind." And humankind in here is just white people. "To fill the gap and join the rest to man." And this is very interesting because throughout history, white supremacists have used a narrative of the uncivilized beast. And essentially, anyone that is not from their cultures, anyone who does not behave like them, if the world technically does not revolve around white people, the white supremacists will refer to you and they will describe you as a beast. And also because you are not like them, therefore you must be inferior, and they ought to be better than you because they were born that way. So that's some fascist nonsense for you. He goes on, "The Olympian host conceived a clever plan. A beast they wrought in semi-human figure, filled it with vice, and called the thing a nigger." So as you can see, that was from an old video. Well, there is more actually. T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot is another great author from beyond the grave, and he was a prolific anti-Semite, all right? He was a prolific anti-Semite. Now remember, I need you to really understand that in politics, the reality is your enemies are oftentimes picked because it's convenient to pick on them, and it's convenient to justify picking on them and labeling them as the enemy, and then present yourself as the solution that will stop that enemy so that you can get more political power, allowing you to do something else, okay, with that political power. Like, the guy from Germany, 1940 to 1945, 1939, 1945, there was a war. There was a guy at the heart of that war. I don't want to say his name, but that guy used anti-Semitism as a vehicle to get political power, to basically achieve fascism. All right? The objective, the myth of achieving a great German nation, right? And so that is the reality of politics, and this is why Jews throughout history have been a very convenient scapegoat. Okay, TS and the real world, it goes on here to basically explain the Jew is underneath the lot. This is from a poem. He wrote, T.S. Eliot is perhaps his most extendedly anti-Semitic poem. Burbank and the I can't say that, poetry generally, and are at the bottom of an economic and cultural conspiracy there. And there is another particular, the same poem. I'll read you some of his work, as you can see here. Julius follows a double strategy of first forcing us to confront squarely passages that we may want to dock, and then contextualizing those passages not within the familiar discourse of high literature, meaning highly here. The familiar discourse here basically refers to healthy discussions, okay? But with the more sinister ones of common anti-Semitism, which is basically slander. Slander basically that generates blatant fear-mongering to scapegoat. Gruntion, for example, the problematic lines at these 6. My house is a decayed house, and the Jew squats on the windowsill, the owner. Now remember this. You see how anti-Semitic this is? Because basically, my house is decayed. In other words, we are suffering, and the Jew, the owner, is comfortably on the windowsill. And he is atop us. He owns us. This is the common anti-Semitic, the Jews own the world conspiracy. He actually writes another particular poetry. At the end, he goes on to write, "The rats are underneath the piles, the Jew is underneath the lot. Money in furs, the boatman smiles." The portrait begins with the image of Pleistine as ape-like, shambling along with palms turned out, in the manner also used to depict Irishmen and blacks at the turn of the century. Chicago Semite Finesse suggests again the charge of ruthless cosmopolitanism. The eye staring from the slime suggests the association of Jews with swamps and lower life forms like leeches. Its incomprehension of canoletto, I don't know how you say that, an alleged incomprehension of the aesthetic. So as you can see, he's using a lot of imagery to essentially directly fearmonger and frame the Jew as the heart of the problem. Typical anti-Semitism. It actually doesn't end there. I would love it to end there, but there is more. There is more. Let's go back to racism and racist characterization. Media usually is a very powerful tool that you can use in order to frame and to control, okay? When you write a book as a novelist, you are essentially trying to guide the human to experience particular emotions that you want them to experience. Well, guess what? Media is the same. Media can be perceived as a story. Even if you are trying to report on the news, you need a story, okay? So what you need, for instance, let's say you are conservative and you are racist, and there is a fight, a gunfight in a black neighborhood. We're not gonna report it in a flat way. We're going to report it with associating black people with crime, all right? Depicting them as criminals, as thugs, and we need more police to control them, which will essentially perpetuate that problem. So as you can see, media is not just a way for you to go ahead and have an honest discussion. Media is a way to depict and to guide people and to socially engineer people in a particular way. And Dr. Seuss, back in during the World War II, he basically drew a lot of imagery that depicted the Japanese people negatively, black people negatively. No one was safe. No one was safe. Even Arabs were drawn negatively, okay? Arabs were drawn negatively. Everybody was drawn negatively. This guy was literally lashing at everybody. And he was basically doing them the way he explained as essentially war, depicting the enemy in a negative way, all right? So, I don't know what you could take from that, but that's how he did it. Sexism is another issue here, and basically Scott Adams is going to be the man that does it. What not to do? Don't be Scott Adams. He basically wanted to defend women from men's rights activists, okay? So there are men's rights activists, and what they want is basically, I don't know, they want men's rights. Yeah, they want that. However, he was trying to defend women. So this guy was not going for sexism, but as he was doing it, he ended up being sexist. You see how that happens? So in an article that was showing everything, Scott Adams, director Dilbert Carrieta, has gotten into quite a bit of hot water recently, and his attempts to backpedal and promote his geniusness have just made him more and more of a jerk. And he rapidly becomes a living example of the people he mocks in his strips. It all began with an essay Adams wrote. And here's the essay. Adam writes, "Now I would like to speak directly to the male readers who feel unjustly treated by the widespread suppression of men's rights. Get over it, you bunch of The reality is that women are treated differently by society for exactly the same reason that children and mentally handicapped and are treated differently. It's just easier this way for everyone. You don't argue with a 4-year-old about why he shouldn't eat candy for dinner. You don't punch a mentally handicapped guy Even if he punched you first, and you don't argue when a woman tells you she's only making 80 cents to your dollar. It's the path of least resistance. You save your energy for more important battles. How many times do we men suppress our natural instincts for sex and aggression just to get something better in the long run? It's called a strategy. Sometimes you sacrifice a pawn to nail the queen. If you're still crying about your pawn when you're having your way with the queen, there is something wrong with you, and it isn't men's right. Damn. Holy God. I don't even know on which side he is. I have no clue on which side he is. I mean, this is the worst thing that you could do. This is literally the single worst thing that you could have done, and he did all of it very, very quickly, all right? How to be sexist while you're not trying to be sexist. Honestly, I don't know what he was thinking there. So anyhow, I'm going to end it here. This video was crazy, and I hope that you at least enjoyed and laughed 1 or 2 times. If you disagree with me on any of what I said, if you would like to expand the discussion, if you would like to add something, get down in the comments below, and I would love to hear from you. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you had at least one laugh, especially the last one. Have a nice day. Bye.